Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. So there I was. This is episode number 94, Pigs with Fins.
Yeah. Fins on pigs, baby.
Fins on pigs. I'm sorry, fins on pigs.
That's okay. It's pigs and fins and slinging what we thought they were slinging more livestock, but
It was. I know. I
Similar.
thought we were going to have. Another livestock story.
Yeah.
We had several in a row there. We're killing livestock. I thought this might be another one.
yeah.
No.
That's sort of that.
Another great episode.
Absolutely. Hey, sponsor this week is Factor. Go to factormeals.com/so there I was 50 for 50% off your order. We'll talk more about that during the show. But speaking of the show, we need some ratings.
Yeah. So rate us at so there I was.us/rate. And apparently, we found out if you've rated us once,
That's it.
you can't rate us again.
No.
Is that right?
Unless you want to raise your rating, 5.5 stars, 6. Don't go in and change your rating to 4 so you can submit another rating. Don't do it.
Now, we had a couple listeners give us a other than stellar rating, and so we've taken your feedback. So come back and re-rate us. Give us a 5-star this time.
There you go. That'll work. And we've had some more people throw money at us. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Well, let's see. Sal Marinello, Tanker Aircraft Commander times 3. Thank you,
Nice.
Sal. Rick Mosley, Tanker Aircraft Commander times 2.
Nice.
We have a new section lead, Jeremy Strack. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
We've got Jim McHale, call sign Navy.
Yep.
Patreon pilot. Thank you. Is that from the Mac Geek Gab?
Yeah, that's how he first heard of us. Yeah.
Hey, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We got Aircav Chris, Tanker Aircraft Commander. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
And we got Philip Flipper Comer. Thank you, Philip. And Julius Caesar Taylor. Thank you, my friend.
Indeed.
Thank all of you for your generous donations. It's very humbling, and we appreciate it.
And thank all of you indeed. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to beg your indulgence, folks, and I'm going to go through all the people who support us and who have so done. The direct donation folks, we've got, of course, Gallo. Joe Anderson has sent us $100. Jeff Cross sent us $100. Michelle Langseth has sent us $50. David Olson sent us $50. Steve Bates is regularly sending us $5 on our website, direct donation. It's so there I was.us/donate. And then Flipper. Phil Comer, you just mentioned him. He sent us $25. And Julius, call sign Caesar, sent us $15. And I believe that's a regular pledge. So thank you, sir.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We have pilots on so there I was.us/Patreon. They're sending us $5 a month. So thank you to Ray Glanville. Statman. We have no idea who you are, Statman, except Statman.
He might want it that way.
Yeah. He probably does. Doesn't want to admit that he listens to us. It's like kissing your sister. It feels good, but you don't want to know you're doing it. All right. Peter Simon, Patrick Miller, Steve, Coach Dito, Peter Duncan. Don't it? Eric Fletcher.
That was too easy.
Yeah, right. Chuck Thompson, Scott Southard, Justin Lundberg Neff, Vapor, Scott Walsh, Jonathan Knuckles, Dragger, Chris Blaine, John B. Hall, Sticks, Wayne Batzer, Scott Christensen, Cal Stewart, Mike Price, Peter Robinson, Chase Cole, Earl McCoy.
Bago.
Yeah, Bago, indeed. And A.E. Schmidt, Hawktard are all people who have sent us $5 per month per the Patreon website. We have some section leads out there. Stephen Plunk, Patrick McLeight, Strecken. He met up with him last month. That was fun. Roger Volstorff. I'm sorry. Let me back up. Those Stephen Plunk and Patrick McLeight are section leads, and our division leads who send $15 a month to us are Strecken, Roger Volstorff, Marcus Ponte, William Wilson, double L, Aircav Chris, Yeah, he became a tanker aircraft commander. Before that, he had sent us a $50 direct donation. So thank you, Aircraft Chris. Yeah.
Aircraft Kiss is rocking it out of the park.
And these are our tanker aircraft commanders. We've got Rick Mosley, Cale Heckerson, Keith Gallagher, Yogi, Ben Hancock, Lawman, and Sal Marinello, who is now ×3. Lawman was ×2, and Chucker is just Chucker category.
Chucker's in his own category, man.
He's absolutely a category by himself. Listen, every one of you people have separated your hard-earned money from your wallet and sent it to us. Speechless. I am humbled. So thank you. You make this show possible. We really appreciate it.
Ditto.
If you want to reach out to us, you could do that. How would you get a hold of us, Fig?
Well, you could send an email to Fig or RePete or Sticks at sothereiwas.us. And if you really need a question answered, our technical guy, a guy with the big brain, that'd be Sticks.
Yeah, especially helicopter questions.
Yeah, anything to do with the whirling shit cans of death, please forward all those to Sticks.
Right?
Sorry for all you helicopter guys out there.
We love you
they
guys.
Scare the hell out of me. Yeah, I do love you. I don't know how you do it, or how you did it, or how you continue to do it.
Exactly. So, thanks to Chase Cole, Bago, running our Facebook group. Big help. Thanks to Sticks, who does a lot of work behind the scenes, helping secure guests, some production, does a lot of our artwork. Great help. Great support to the show. Thank you, sir.
Critical team member. Man.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Sometime co-host. Thanks to Brad Silcott at bdsaviationphotography.com. Go see some amazing aviation shots there, right? And then, of course, the Dos Gringos, who let us degrade their music by associating it with our show every week.
Oh my gosh! Hopefully, and you know what's funny is I listened to a Dos Gringos song today when I was driving, and I laughed my ass off.
Right?
It's not one I hear all the time, so I kind of forgot about it, and then I listened to the words, and oh my gosh,
those guys are so creative. It's amazing. So
there's not a bad song on any of those albums. No. They're all really great.
There's not indeed. Hey, I think what we've forgotten to talk about here. Well, we haven't forgotten, but we're getting to it now. Our guest this week,
Iceman. Holy cow.
Yeah.
He has some great stories. He had an incredible flying career in the Navy, flying well, let's be honest, it was a whirling
shit can of death.
Whirling dervish shit can of death.
SH-60s, and then to the UH-1 Huey, also known as Iroquois, but not by many folks. But he did that down well south of the equator, down at the South Pole, down in Antarctica.
Very unique. And that sets up a whole line of logistics and issues that you don't even think about on a normal day.
Never think about that stuff. Occasionally, if you go into Minneapolis on a cold January day when it's 40, 45 below zero, then you go, okay, you're close to that. But you aren't dealing with that day in and day out that they're dealing with down in Antarctica. Things like they were coming into a site and crew chief thought they were on fire. They weren't on fire. It wasn't smoke. They were contrailing. It was so cold. They were about to land, and they're contrailing.
Yeah, that's... think about that. That's normally you're not contrailing until you're up in the 30s.
Yeah.
30,000s.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, never one day did I ever think that was possible.
And then a great story about some blubber that has been preserved there for, I don't know, 100 years or more.
Yeah. Don't ruin it, because that's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we get out of the way and listen to Ice tell these amazing stories. Flying down in Antarctica. Oh, terrifying.
I think he volunteered for that shit.
He did.
Somehow. Yeah.
Tell us all about it, Ice.
True story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fun.
So there I was, supporting the National Science Foundation's Operation Deep Freeze in Antarctica. We had landed our Huey near the crater of Mount Erebus, one of the continent's 2 active volcanoes. Due to being in about 12,000 feet altitude, we were on oxygen, fairly rare for a helicopter crew. The outside temperature was typical, about 0 degrees, a bit colder. We had picked our passengers up and their gear. As I started to pull collective, it was obviously we were near max gross weight, and the heavy HH-1 November blades were trying to get as much lift as the thin air allowed. As we hovered to begin our transition to forward flight, the nose started to yaw left toward the mountain. We had lost tail rotor effectiveness.
Ooh. What?
And that's how all terrifying aviation stories begin. Holy
No.
buckets.
All right, who's this? Introduce yourself.
Oh, what?
Hey,
Sticks.
Oh, this is Sticks. Sorry.
Oh, boy. Oh,
There
boy.
you go. Sticks to coming to you from
It's
New
okay.
Hampshire.
I'm an amateur. Yeah. This is, okay. Yeah. So this is Sticks. We're coming to you live from New Hampshire, and we have a outstanding guest with us today.
We'll get to him. Let's get the cohorts in.
Boy, oh, boy, you lay it all out for him. And he shifted gears
Stick
and he
gears.
missed his
Well.
third gear.
Yeah.
God
It's okay.
bless
That's
him.
That's all right.
Jump in there, third gear.
Hey, this is Fig, and I am in Kearney, Missouri today, which we are 1 week away, by the way, from the Chiefs clinching their
Something.
Anyway, where are you, my co-host, RePete?
I'm in New Hampshire for another couple of days before I blast off around the world westbound to unwind what I did last month. Greetings, everybody. It's so good to be back with you, and we are honored to bring in with us today a rotorhead, call sign Iceman, who has got quite a resume to include, go all the way back to True Lies episode. Call sign Bugs was on that one. Bugs and I and Fig flew Harriers together back in the day. And Iceman and Bugs went to the FBI Academy together, amongst other things. So, but indeed, welcome, Iceman. We're super thrilled to have you with us. It doesn't sound like you're going to be able to tell very many good stories, so we may have to coach you along. I get that. No, that was an excellent opening. Thank you very much. Let's go back to the beginning. You were born and decided you wanted to fly airplanes. How'd that happen?
well, yeah, this might upset many of your listeners or previous guests, but I never really thought I would be flying aircraft. It wasn't something that crossed my mind. You know, I was the youngest of 5 kids. My dad was a Navy Seabee in World War II, joined at age 17, served in the South Pacific. Aviation really wasn't in my family, wasn't in my history, but I decided to take a ROTC scholarship, and aviation looked like my best option at the time, and I was fortunate enough to get selected.
We've had a couple of those, right, Fig?
Yeah. That's not an uncommon story. Actually, there's several that we've talked to that.
I went and took a test with my roommate. No, he didn't get to fly. I did.
Yeah, that was father. Yeah, ended up having like 6,000 hours in the F-15. But he had no desire to fly when he was a kid.
Some of us, it's all we ever wanted to do from the time we were a little kid or a teenager, and then other guys just go, yeah, I guess I'll do that. What the hell? But you did it. Very cool.
I heard you say ROTC scholarship. Where'd you go to school, sir?
So it was the typical, 17-year-old decisions. My dad took me to ROTC night. Only one of my other brothers went to college, and the Army they wanted you to PT 3 days a week in the morning. I'm like, yeah, I like working out, but my own time, so I'm not going with that Army stuff. And the Air Force, they gave out their scholarships by major, all being engineering. Like, that doesn't interest me at all. I want to be a forester, so I'll go in the Navy. So that's how I made that decision. Got into Penn State Forestry, and the Navy's like, dude, psst, by the way, there's no trees in the ocean. We're not paying for that. So I ended up going to Cornell University because that was fairly close to home, about an hour 20 away. And I studied environmental sciences, natural resources, so not an engineer. But my college roommates were engineers, so I got to feel some of the pain.
Okay. All right.
We're witness it firsthand.
Yeah. Yes. And one of those roommates became an F-14 pilot, and he was the kind that knee-high to a grasshopper, had his pilot's license before his driver's license. And he was a lot of fun to be with during flight school when I sucked and he didn't, but so be it.
It's always good to have someone that understands, though. Hey, explain that to me.
Exactly.
How's that whole seatbelt thing work?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So got to flight school, assume Pensacola. Did you go through Milton or did you go down to Corpus for primary?
I did. I went through Milton. So it was AI was November 88, and then ground school January 89, VT2, and then HT18. Stayed right there at Milton for my helicopter training. And of course we flew with the Coasties. So the jokes back then, because they were the Department of Transportation back then, was what do you guys do?
Right.
What do you guys do for a short tour? Take tolls at the bridges?
Something like that.
You can't be a Coastie pilot. You're too short. What do you mean by that? Well, when you ground the ship, you can't walk to shore, can you?
Yeah. Well, let's go with the real joke. How many Coasties does it take to have a burial at sea? The answer is 6. 1 to throw the body over the side, and 5 to stomp the guy in the mud. But I'm an HT. I'm a product of HT18 as well. Went to VT3 though. So
nice.
Yeah, so flight school was hard for me. It was really hard. My on-wing was a Marine Screamer, so I got the knee board in the back of the helmet more than once.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
And I understand that you have to learn under pressure, but that's just didn't work for me very well. Got a down on HFAM 8. Then got a new on-wing who was also a Marine, but he was awesome. Huge mountain of a man, excellent instructor. He'd screw up a landing and he'd read a letter to your parents. Dear Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, we are sorry to inform you that your son, in service of the country, he'd go on with this formal letter, and then at the very end, because he screwed up the landing in the last 200 feet and turned a naval aircraft into a fireball. Okay, thank you, I get it. So, yeah, finally made it through. Got another down in form something or another. So I wasn't eligible for jets with 2 downs, but I really didn't care because that never interested me. For whatever reason, I thought helicopters would be fun. So I excelled during the basic instrument section. I enjoyed that. Of course, I think Pete mentioned once, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. In that area of Florida where we'd practice and they only give you the wet compass, you soon come to realize that most of those agricultural roads are north-south or east-west. And in the helicopter, you look through that chin bubble, you're like, oh, look at that road, almost to north. I think I'll stop here. Hey, son, you nailed that one. Really, very good. But
yeah,
I did all right in VIs and then did really well in helicopters. Graduated. I like to say I was the top Navy graduate. That's what I put on my resume because there was a Marine who beat me. So.
He got lucky.
That's great. So for Navy guys, helicopter, was there anything other than a HS-60 at the time? As a choice,
the 46, the tandem rotor.
Yeah, and the Navy had 53s as well.
I don't remember if they had 53s at that time. They may have.
Okay.
Yep, they may have.
Boy, if they did, there weren't many.
They did at one point pick up 53s, basically for the heavy lift mission, but there are not a lot of platforms that you can put a 53 on. But let's talk, let's not blast too quickly through HTs. What was it like because I know what it was like, but what was it like for you when you were learning how to hover? And, how long did it take you? And, and I also have a lot of memories back to when I was learning, when we go through, because you go through like a whole nother ground school where you're learning about the helicopter and then you get all of the helicopter aerodynamic theories. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Hovering, I'll start with that hovering question. It was certainly difficult, but as I think one of your other helo pilots mentioned, his instructor, and it may have been Army, if I remember correctly, would give him one set of controls at the time. When you're watching the other students, you always knew which set the instructor had. It depended if so you start over the pad, nice and steady. And then let's say he gives you the pedals first. So now you're over the pad and you're maintaining altitude, but your nose is going like this. So that's the student.
Back and forth, back and forth.
Then he gives you the
You're
collective.
just scanning the
So
landing area, right? That's your bullshit
so
excuse.
going,
Stick with that.
with the collective and the pedals, you're going like this. But you're right over the spot because you don't have the cyclic yet. And then he gives you the cyclic and you go like this. And he takes the controls and you go like this.
Back to
and
steady.
You start it all over again.
For our listeners who aren't watching, it's it gets slowly more and more out of phase until the instructor takes it and puts it back into a nice still.
Yeah. What I always recalled was you would very quickly can end up in pilot induced oscillations because you put in an input and then you take it back out and you put back too much and then you end up oscillating. So I had one instructor who said, what you want to do, it's like the ladies' man. You're holding, if you remember, go back to Tim Meadows with Saturday Night Live,
Courvoisier.
holding on to the bottle of the glass of Courvoisier in your hand and you're just sort of mixing the pot. And for me, it took me, I want to say it was about 6 to 8 hours before I could sort of.
68 hours. Holy shit, dude. How many hours did you get in the HTs? I think RePete and I got 68 hours total from beginning to end. Jeez.
Well,
are you Fig, are you sure you passed your hearing test?
What'd he say just then?
What?
6 is, that sounds about right. I didn't remember it being like so challenging. I'm never going to get this and go home crying, but I didn't remember it, being, this is nothing. So it definitely was challenging, but
you flew, and you guys had the Bravo, the F-57 Bravo, and then the Charlie model, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, because the Charlie model had a little bit of stabilization built into it, and it was a little easier to fly.
That was the
I think we only flew that for instruments.
Right?
Yeah, that's when you all your advanced and your instrument stuff was done there. Did you get any of the demos where they demonstrated like blowback or translational lift and all of that stuff?
Yes. Yeah. So if I can jump back to that aerodynamics question, the one that really freaked me was, the lift that you put into the blade, say at 3 o'clock, is felt at 12 o'clock, depending on the airframe.
Right.
So when Sikorsky was first building the aircraft and they didn't realize that, moved the stick forward and he goes left. Like, what the heck? So they'd figure all that out. That was just wild to me, especially, not being an engineer.
Yeah.
That's called unnatural acts of aviation, at which the helicopter is.
It's actually called it's called gyroscopic precession. And what Igor Sikorsky figured out was by putting in he made changes in the mixing unit so that the blade pitch cyclically changed around the rotor arc. And that's how it changed. So, or how it worked.
I can't spell any of that.
Why don't we just do this in Greek so we all know we're at least speaking the same?
Well, that's why I'm here. That's why I said maybe I should come on the show.
Yeah. No, that's terrifying. But I think Sugar, who flew both Harriers and helicopters, talked about that. He said that the aerodynamics portion was, there you go. Fig's holding up the sign. Happiness is vectored thrust, baby. That's the way to do it. Yeah, Sugar
that's under the resin on my bar. I'm standing it. I just took a picture of it.
It was all PFM.
PFM.
Yeah. So, all right.
So, how about auto rotations? How did you like that?
Oh, hold on. What is an auto rotation? Iceman, describe an auto rotation, what it is, and then how you liked it.
If you lose your engine or engines, depending on the airframe, you're able to maintain the rotors spinning, which is what provides lift in general, by taking the pitch of them to a lower pitch. So you work on maintaining that RPM as you figure out where you might be able to land the aircraft, the helicopter, and attempt to get into the wind, of course. So as you're doing all that, once you set up and get to a particular altitude, again, it depends on the aircraft, the weight of the aircraft, you start to pull in collective, which increases pitch on the rotor blades and gives you your lift back. If executed correctly, you can land with 0 ground speed and 0 rate of descent. Of course,
nice.
Much easier said than done. In the H-60 that I flew, we did not execute those to the ground. You'd come close, relatively close, and turn the engines back on. In the Huey, we were allowed to take them to the ground at certain points during my training, but then at other times they did not allow us because they realized that we were ruining more aircraft during training than actual engine failures. Because all naval aircraft had 2 engines for shipboard operations, you could still, fly with 1 engine.
Right. And that's where, that rotor RPM is so critical to a helicopter pilot because, it's as soon as you have an engine failure or something like that, the mantra is NR maintain. But the other interesting thing is as you turn, you increase rotor RPM. So you will usually end up pulling in a little bit of collective. And then as you roll out, you're going to reduce that collective. And then as you're coming into flare, you're also going to build up more rotor RPM. So you may be pulling in a little bit of collective. So there's a lot of little nuances in there, and it takes a little bit of time to sort of figure that out. And anyways, it's
and normally the RPM is maintained for you once you get there at 100%. So doing it manually is a change in your scan, and I've found it quite easy to overspeed.
Right. You could easily overspeed the rotor head. And I had done that once or twice on the 65. We did power recovery autos as well. We did not do them to the ground because we would damage more aircraft than we actually had engine failures. So, but I thought that would be worthwhile talking about. And it was awesome job.
Very cool. All right. So you get your wings when?
February of 90. I got my first choice to fly the SH-60 Bravo. I think they're up to the Romeo Sierra. They're up to quite a few models past that, but it was the Bravo at the time. And the SH-60 Seahawk is the Navy's version of the Army's Black Hawk.
Yeah.
So what the Navy does is load it up with electronics gear for anti-submarine warfare and anti-ship surveillance and targeting. There's a sonobuoy launcher, launch 25 sonobuoys, or, will hold 25 sonobuoys, a MAD boom, magnetic anomaly detector to hunt submarines, which was brought up in the previous episode.
Yep.
There's no left door in the back of it. That's where the sensor operator / crew chief / SAR swimmer sits. Talk about well-trained Navy personnel.
That's all that is one person? Wow.
Yes.
Man.
And what else is different? So the struts are beefier to land on a ship, and they're moved forward from the Black Hawk. The tail of the aircraft can be folded, and the main rotor blades folded so that it will fit in a hangar of an aircraft. So there's quite a few modifications compared to a Black Hawk. And if I remember this correctly, I was once told that the Black Hawks were having a problem with their low-level flight. All of a sudden, the stabulator is a long wing-looking thing, and the tail, which is meant to level the aircraft, because as you go in forward flight, your nose pitches down for the helicopter. So that stabulator will bring your airframe, and it's fly-by-wire. It'll slew it so that you're flying relatively level. And the Army's version was having a problem where that stabulator would slew down without being commanded to do so, which meant the nose pitched to the ground and they would crash because they were flying super low level and fast. And what eventually they found out was the Navy's aircraft were not doing that because they were the electronics were so well shielded for shipboard use, because you don't want the radars on the ship to ruin the avionics of your aircraft. What was happening, the Army's version did not have that shielding, and when they would go over high tension wires, the electronic signal would cause it to slew, and they crashed a few of them.
Oh, shit. Well, how about that?
Yeah, hard way to learn a lesson.
No, yeah. Wow. All right. So, RePete, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but you're on mute, and we miss your voice.
I knew that. I was just
Sounds
trying
like Sticks was talking too.
I was, yeah, I put myself on mute because I didn't want to have any background noise coming in on you.
Okay.
But one thing that I also would add in, so what you want to think about is that rotor disc is you're flying the rotor disc is really what you're doing, and the helicopter fuselage itself is like a pendulum that sits underneath, and as that rotor disc tips forward, the pendulum sort of hangs down, and you do and so with the tail or the empennage of the aircraft, you have typically an inverted airfoil that actually will pull the nose down and lift the nose up, making it more comfortable for flight. So, anyways.
Man.
Thank you.
Empennage and all these words.
It's empennage.
Empennage being the tail section of the helicopter.
Yeah.
So.
You're, man, all these highfalutin words for us aviators, us marine aviators.
I'm going to have to go back through this, and I'm going to have to add a bunch more stuff
in the glossary.
Right.
There you go.
The glossary.
So there was .us/glossary.
So, man, what happens when? Well, first of all, what are float bags?
Yeah.
And what happens when they inflate in flight? That doesn't sound good.
No, sounds bad.
Well, we were. I did have one story from my FRS, the fleet.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that.
The RAG. So it was HSL 40 in Mayport, Florida. And from there I went to HSL 44, Swamp Fox in Mayport. But during SEER training, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, I'm sure that's in your glossary.
Oh, yeah.
I was up in Brunswick, Maine during the spring, although it was still snowing.
Yeah,
and apparently I didn't pay close attention to the lecture when they said, don't sign for anything. That's all I heard. I didn't hear the part, don't sign your name except for your belongings. So when they take your initial, you get captured and you're put in your little prison cell, and then they come and say, sign for clothes, sign for clothes. No. Fine, give me clothes. Huh? Give me clothes. So I gave my clothes. And I'm in my skivvies, in the cold, in the concrete cell, sitting on my bucket. Yeah, no clothes. So they come back. You want your clothes? Yes. I want my clothes. Sign for clothes. No, I'm not signing nothing. They told me not to sign for nothing. So I never got clothes, except when I went to see the provost marshal to get interrogated. So I was probably the only student, at least in that class, that couldn't wait to get beat on by the provost marshal because I got warm clothes to wear. You can't go to the provost marshal in your skivvies.
I'm impressed. You had skivvies on. I'd like you had selective hearing, and I would refuse to sign. Only I had no skivvies, so I was in the nude for a large portion of. As a matter of fact, I was out in the yard part, and finally they went, "Okay, training time out. Put these on."
Is that because you couldn't control?
If only you'd had some. So there I was, bikini bottoms.
I could have rocked that shit too, man. Especially back then.
Right on. Oh man.
So figure question about
pain. Oh, my eye.
Iceman, I feel your pain, brother. I was right there with you.
Oh. So
Fig, back to your question about
the float bags.
Float bags sounds horrible.
Float bags are very large Mylar bags on the side of the helicopter that if you're going to ditch, you can inflate them by flipping up the arm switch and the inflate switch. Two different switches. They're guarded and protected so you don't inadvertently just bop them for fun. And then these Mylar bags come out both sides, and they allow the aircraft to float, in theory, long enough for you to get out safely. So we were finishing up an exercise. It was, one of those blue on red exercises, flying off of a frigate. And we were just drilling holes in the sky after the exercise, waiting for flight quarters. And we didn't really know what to do. So, at least I'll put these away. And I grabbed the big eyes, which are very large very powerful but gyro-stabilized binoculars that we were using to help with the exercise. I said, I'll just put these away. And I grabbed them and I put them in their case. And boom, huge noise. Just like we lost an engine. That's what my pilot and I thought we did.
Oh, boy.
It's like, what the heck was that? We must have lost an engine. We're looking at the gauges. The gauges are fine. All the engine gauges are perfect. No problem. We're still flying. But the pitot-static instruments were fluctuating. So the altitude, the altimeter, the VSI, the vertical rate of descent, they're fluctuating. What the heck is going on? We couldn't figure it out. So the pilot in command, I was the co-pilot for this flight. I wasn't qualified yet. He goes, I know what happened. Look in the rearview mirror. Look in the rearview mirror, and the float bags are flapping against the static port, which is on the side of the aircraft.
Oh, no.
And that's causing the fluctuation in the instruments. Well, there is no emergency procedure for inadvertently inflating the float bags in flight. You don't do that. So we have no idea what the airframe is going to do at high airspeed. Are the bags going to tear off and go up into the rotor disc or the tail rotor? Low airspeed, does that cause a problem? Do they deflate at some point? We don't know anything about this.
This is not
good. So we called for emergency flight quarters, and the pilot in command said, go ahead, take the landing. And at the time, I was like, he thinks I'm a better pilot than he is? This doesn't make any sense. But whatever, I'll take the landing. Okay. We don't know, I guess he wanted me to be at fault when we crashed and burned. I don't know. Well, what he was doing, what I finally realized, after you look back at it all, is that was cockpit crew coordination, and he could have a better understanding of everything situational awareness-wise, everything going on, if I was flying and he didn't have to fly. I mean, he knew I could land the aircraft.
I just want to tell you both, good luck. We're all counting on you.
It's all yours.
He knew I could land the aircraft, right? But all those other variables that he would have to take into account as the helicopter aircraft commander, he now had the capacity to do so. So great head work on his part. We did land without incident, and the officer in charge of our detachment was like, my aircraft has mumps.
So did you ever find out what deployed the float bags?
Yes, we did. As I moved the big eyes, the strap from it, I mentioned that the arm switch is guarded with a red cover, and then it's safety wired. That safety wire was rusted, and nobody realized it. So as I moved the strap, the only thing we imagined could have possibly happened is the strap caught the arm switch, and because the safety wire was rusted through, it didn't have much to stop it, if anything. And it also caught the inflate switch.
Boom.
Boom. Yeah, boom is right. Boom.
Boom.
Big boom.
Wow. And I'm just going to say the reason for the float bags, you said in case you had to ditch, because when helicopters land on water, and they're not supposed to, all the weight, engine, transmission, everything is on the top. So they always would roll inverted and sink upside down.
Right.
Hence the helo dunker that we all had to go through.
The helo dunker, right. And that was one thing that people get real scared about is that helo dunker. But that never really bothered me. I knew even if I was blindfolded and you all had to get out of one exit, however many are in there, 5, 6 of you.
Yeah.
I knew that the best opportunity was I don't know exactly when I need to take that last breath. So you take it early enough that you don't all of a sudden get a mouthful of water. Yeah. And then let everybody get out first, because otherwise you're just going to get kicked in the head and you're not going to know where you are.
Teeth.
So just take some time, relax. I mean, if you're going to die, the SAR swimmer is going to grab you. So, you're not going to die. But just relax a little bit, get towards that exit. And then once you're out, you don't know if you're upside down or right side up. So your flight boots will sink, your helmet will float. So once again, take your time, hang out a little bit, let yourself get upright, because you're going to get upright naturally without fighting it, and then you swim up. So I never really had a big problem with the helo dunker.
Yeah. I think, those that could not swim were far more terrified of that than those who were. But,
I almost failed the helo dunker because I stayed too long. So I just
hanging out, reading a book.
I hung out. I let everybody else get out, which gave me a nice clear path without getting kicked in the head. And the divers that were in the pool with us nearly, they started to come in and were grabbing me, and I'm waving them off. I'm hitting them. I'm like, get away! I don't want to fail this,
Yeah.
So it was a good time.
Oh man,
piece of cake.
So
cake.
There you go. So all right, so you wind up surviving that one, and then you make it out to your first cruise. And things didn't go so well. Was it a jerk CO?
First point? No, first point. Are we talking about the first port visit?
Or I never said that he was a jerk, but the skipper on that
an asshole.
The skipper on that workup we had the float bag incident. He was awesome. Yeah. He understood the air crew. He understood how to use the aircraft. That it was an asset, because it extended the range of sensors for the ship. Okay. We had a direct data link to the ship, so they could see our radar picture. They could see our sonar buoys. Now, that meant a lot of things to him. One thing it meant, he was a junior, being a frigate, he was a junior commanding officer, so we did exercises in Roosevelt Roads, Puerto Rico. And he took the helo dead up when we were all pulling into port. He said, look, guys, I'm the junior skipper here, so our ship's got to come in almost last to port. There's not going to be any rental cars left. So I want you guys to fly off, get me a rental car so we can have a good time while we're here. So, he knew how to use the air deck. But on the long deployment for the first Gulf War, he felt we were a liability. Anytime we were in the air, there was an opportunity for us to end up in the water and be a stain on his record. So he, sort of had that that idea in his head to begin with. We pulled into Rota, Spain for our first port visit, and they have an H-60 contingency there that train with us, with the U.S. So the air deck, we all went out and met that squadron, met the CO. The CO wanted to take us on several of the ships to show us their ships, so we toured the ships. Of course, they are wet ships, meaning they serve alcohol in their Navy. So the tradition is to have a drink on every ship. So that started the afternoon.
Nice.
Then we got to dinner time, which in Spain was later than we were used to. Curfew had been set, I don't know, I'll say 11 o'clock, relatively, because we were pulling out of port the next day, relatively early curfew, but there was a curfew on the ship. The dinner was the first course and the second course and the third course and the fourth course. He didn't order off the menu. The chef just kept bringing out food. He was well respected in the community, and it was a great time. And of course, more drinks and different drinks with every course. So eventually we got to where we are not making it back to ship by 11 o'clock or wherever the curfew had been set. So our officer in charge, lieutenant commander, he called the ship, explained what was going on. We were with a foreign national. This was super important to the liaison, and the skipper had nothing of it. It's like, no, you will be on this ship. So we show up past 11 o'clock. The officer of the deck pulls our ID cards, and we get put in hack for 30 days, meaning we cannot leave the ship, which is fine if you're going to some wherever port or you're transiting the Med like we were going to do. Yeah. But our next port visit was Palma de Mallorca, Spain. Anyone familiar with that port knows that they have some
of the finest beaches on the planet. And some of the finest talent on those beaches.
So planet. I gave one of my roommates, I was in the what they call the JO jungle, the junior officer jungle. So there were 6 of us, 3 racks on one side, 3 racks on the other side. I gave one of my roommates, who was not in hack because he was ship's company, gave him my camera, and I said, use as much film as you can, buddy.
That's sad.
Yeah, the skipper called back to the squadron, wanted to send us home. I mean, he was pissed, but, it's an air debt for you.
Hey, shit happens. You're out in the Ville. Wow.
That's actually not
unfortunate.
uncommon. That's also common with the Coast Guard. Not that you're an air det, you become an asset to the ship, and how you get utilized, is can be a very unique and challenging experience. So, and I'll just leave it at that. So,
yeah, there you go. All right.
I mentioned that lesson earlier on the float bags. One lesson I learned on this cruise, the officer in charge he was very well respected for his knowledge of the aircraft. He drove us very hard. Even in downtime, he would drive us to be reading the NATOPS. He was not fun to work for, but one of his mantras was, if there's any doubt, there's no doubt. When it comes... sorry about that.
Careful, there's a lot of gravity next to you there.
Ow! My
storm
eye.
hit me.
That's all right. Yeah. So,
So if there was any doubt, there is no
If there's
doubt.
any doubt, there's no doubt.
Like that.
So we had a battery issue, and it was during the day. So when we read NATOPS on are we allowed to fly and in what conditions are we allowed to fly, does it have to be, is daytime okay? Is shipboard okay? It just wasn't really clear. It was one of those statements where depending on where you put the commas, you could take it either way. And he said, gentlemen, if there's no doubt, if there's a doubt, there's no doubt. So we didn't fly. And that has stuck with me for my life. There's plenty of times where you're going to do something and you're wondering, should I really do this or that, safety wise or otherwise. And I always think, if there's doubt, there's no doubt. I'm just not going to do it. It's not worth the risk.
Right.
Nice.
No shit.
Nice.
All right. Well, that's great advice for all of aviation, no doubt about it. But it sounds like you had a little bit of fun. Now, you wrote to us about some shipboard pranks. Was some of this as a result of being bored whilst in hack?
Well, not necessarily, but you got to do something on the ship to enjoy yourself. Like we found a bucket of phosphorescent paint, and for the Marines, that means glow in the dark.
Ah, thank you.
And I'd paint somebody's flip flops glow in the dark. So then, at night when you go to put your flip flops on to use the head, like what why are they glowing? Just strange things like that. Or the officer in charge liked to take chem lights, break them open, put them in a squirt gun, come into our space, which was just a very small room, close the door, which meant it's completely dark, and then start squirting us. And I got a hold of a weather balloon. We had a weather detachment on board, so they would send up balloons to get readings. And I didn't realize it, but weather balloons are super thin. So I put foot powder in it or some kind of powder in the balloon as much as I could fit. And then I blew it up in my boss's rack. So it filled up the whole rack. Weather balloons are large. Filled up the whole rack. And when he went to get it out, of course, it hit something. I heard
Powder
him
everywhere.
I heard his voice 3 staterooms away. Why he called my name, I don't know. But
Nice, man. That's awesome. So wait, how did you blow it up, though? How did you blow the balloon up?
Well, I didn't pass out from
Okay. All right.
gas,
head up.
From
some
going
kind of pump.
across the Atlantic. I don't remember how I blew it up, but
All right.
I got to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, plead the fifth on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard somebody blew the balloon up. I don't know who actually blew it up.
Oh, man. That's a scream. Holy cow. And then you find yourself pretty quickly over in the heart of the first Gulf War.
WW Gulf War
Well,
One. Where
It was one. It was towards the tail end. So some guys in our squadron, they went over towards the beginning. They came home with holes in their aircraft. They were getting shot at. They got air medals.
Oof.
So we ended up in the North Red Sea doing boarding ops, enforcing the UN sanctions against Iraq to make sure that no contraband was going up the Gulf of Aqaba. So we would provide air support. We would count potatoes, meaning we'd use our FLIR. We had a FLIR on board. The ship would contact the merchant vessel, tell them to put all of their personnel on the forecastle, the pointy end of the ship, And then we would use the FLIR. They would say they have 13. We would count, yep, they're all mustered on the forecastle. And then I believe it was a Coast Guard contingent that would board the merchant vessel and, do their search, and then we'd go on. So on paper, it was the Gulf War, but I really don't feel like, I'm a war vet like some folks.
Well, RePete and I watched the entire first Gulf War from the ready room of VMA 223 at Cherry Point. So at least you were somewhere near it.
Yeah. And sometimes our Western ready room in Yuma, Arizona, while we were out dropping heavy weapons, getting ready to go to the Gulf War. And then they had the discourtesy to end the war in 4 days.
Yeah, that was a bunch of shit.
Yeah, we didn't even get a turn.
Now seeding, bitter, party of one. Bitter,
exactly.
Sorry, party of two.
Well, it was it was a little frustrating, but hey, I'm glad you were there at least, and thank you for your service, by the way.
Indeed.
I know it didn't sound, you didn't think it was very glamorous at the time, but it was important, and you did it, and that's pretty damn awesome.
Absolutely.
Interesting side note. So the reason why the Coast Guard would be doing the boarding is that they're not under the Department of Defense, and therefore that if you were to use like a Navy asset, then it becomes a military operation versus the Coast Guard being a law enforcement operation. So that's why actually a lot of the Navy vessels carry what's called a MARDET or a LEDET, law enforcement detachment, which is a small special ops group from the Coast Guard. So
keep your hand in the game. Cool.
A little smarter. Thank
cool.
you. Sticks.
All right. Are you searching for a convenient way to embrace healthier eating habits without the hassle of meal prep and cooking? Factor has got you covered. With Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered straight to your door, eating well every day is now as easy as opening your fridge. Offering over 35 different meal options each week, including keto, calorie smart, vegan plus veggie, and more, Factor ensures variety and flavor in every bite. And with over 55 nutrition-packed add-ons, your meal planning just became an exciting culinary adventure. Ready to go revolutionize your dining experience? Start today for a week filled with feel-good gourmet meals. Speaking from personal experience, while the meals themselves are nothing short of fantastic, Factor's add-ons like their smoothies have been an absolute game changer for me. As someone constantly on the move with little time to prepare meals, Factor's offerings are a dream come true. Their smoothies are a perfect complement to the meals. Their meals provide delicious, healthy, and balanced option that's ready in under 5 minutes. It's ideal for those like me who dread the kitchen, yet refuse to compromise on the quality of their food. Factor stands out not just for its meals, but for its commitment to convenience and quality. Their 2-minute meals offer restaurant-quality taste with 0 wait time, and their extensive selection of snacks, smoothies, and breakfast options ensures you're covered for every part of your day. Economically, Factor beats takeout, hands down, offering nutritious and delectable meals at a fraction of the cost. For anyone seeking fast, premium food solutions without the fuss, Factor is the perfect fit. Their flexible plans allowing for 6 to 18 meals per week cater to any schedule, and the option to pause or reschedule deliveries means you're always in control. With 100% ready-to-eat, ready-to-heat meals, your days of prepping and cleaning are over. Now here's the deal. Go to factormeals.com/SoThereIWas50 and use the promo code SoThereIWas50 to get 50% off your first order. Yes, that's 50% off your first week of no prep, no mess, gourmet meals, and delicious add-ons like the smoothies. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Elevate your mealtime with Factor and enjoy the difference today. Again, that's factormeals.com/SoThereIWas50 and use the promo code SoThereIWas50 to get 50% off your first order. Well, we had a hard time coming up with a call sign for you, but it looks like you guys had some interesting call signs within thy squadron. Talk to us about some of those.
As I mentioned, there weren't many Hilo guys that got call signs, but one that I can recall, he was the first lieutenant division in my first squadron, so sort of the maintenance of the spaces kind of job. And the skipper wanted him to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Before you get further into that, so you touched on it briefly, but explain what the first lieutenant is on a ship, please.
So on a ship or in a squadron,
Yeah.
it's a position, not a rank.
Right.
And they sort of take care of the maintenance aspect of the facility.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for doing it. You grazed over it, and I went, yeah, let's go back to that. I wanted to make sure that's the best way to say it. It wasn't a rank. It was a job for a lieutenant. So okay. Cool. All right.
It's a gang. It's a club.
Yeah, that's right.
So the skipper wanted him to ask his division to landscape the front of the squadron so it looked better than the other squadrons because they're all in a row. So, of course, he got the call sign Shrubber, and that stuck with him.
Roger the Shrubber.
Shrubber. And then Leaky, because the pilot's last name was Fawcett, so he was Leaky. Got not a clue what his first name really is. He's just Leaky.
Right. Yeah.
And then
How many guys do we know that we don't know their name, Fig?
Yeah. Well, like, what's Hammer? You know, Hammer Martell. What's his first name?
Yeah.
Or Kraft. Yeah. Cheese. Kraft. Yeah. What the hell's his first name?
And the other one that I always enjoyed was Dog Boy, because every time you'd ask him a question, he'd tilt his head. Like a dog does. He became Dog Boy.
That is how you get that is exactly how you get a call sign.
So he was the guy I was flying with around Puerto Rico, and he was flying, so he was doing the radios. I said, "Hey, Dog Boy, we're getting close to the San Juan Tower airspace. Give him a call, let him know we're here." So he calls them, and they call back, "San Juan?" He says nothing. Like, "Dog Boy, tell the tower that get permission to transit." So he calls the tower again. They come back, "San Juan?" Nothing. Like, "Dog Boy, what are you doing? You hear him? You got your radios up?" "Oh yeah, he said stand by." Just misinterpreted San Juan for stand by. Hence, stand by. Dog Boy. Great guy though.
Thank you for that. I needed that right there.
Beautiful.
Did you talk about Sticky Man?
Sticky Man, because we'll get to the Antarctica deployment, I'm sure, but we had a Halloween party, and it's not like you can go to the costume store down there and grab something. So he decided to put sticky notes all over his body. So he became Sticky Man.
Okay.
The antics. Oh, man.
All right.
The antics on the ship, when I was a midshipman and we would do training, so during college, your rank as a midshipman when you're going through the ROTC program, the pranks I saw when I would do my summer training, I fortunately didn't fall for any. I don't know if I had enough head work to realize what was going on or what. But, they'd send somebody for relative bearing grease. And the ship's company, they know what's going on. So they go, "Oh, no. You got to go ask Chief so-and-so." And then go find Chief so-and-so. "Yeah, I'm here looking for some relative bearing grease." No. That's up on the third level. You got to go talk to someone. You run around the ship all day looking for relative bearing grease.
Yeah.
The air slug recovery team. So they have torpedo tubes on the ships to launch the torpedoes, and they launch them with an air slug. It just pushes the torpedo out of the tube. So for maintenance, they make sure that is working properly without a torpedo. But, times are tough. You got to save money. So they would suit somebody up in all the protective gear and all the flotation stuff they need in case they fall overboard, because it's right near the edge of the ship. Give them a big plastic garbage bag to put out in front of the torpedo tube to be the air slug recovery team. We got to capture that air slug. And they're out there, and boom, the bag blows up, of course, and it scares the heck out of them. And but my all-time favorite was we're in general quarters. So general quarters is that condition of the ship where everything is locked down. It's as if you're getting attacked or going to be attacking. It's general quarters. And they told this one midshipman during general quarters, "Hey, you got a long-distance phone call on the bridge." The bridge is like where everything's happening. So he is busting through all these doors that you're not supposed to open in general quarters. You're supposed to be where you're assigned. He's busting open these hatches, doors, and getting up and pops open on the bridge. "They say I got a long-distance phone call up here."
I bet that went over like a fart in church.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure the skipper was.
Oh, you think you got a phone call, huh, there, midshipman?
Yeah. Yeah, Marcus Ponte mentions a couple in the comments. Key to the sea chest. Go to the bosun locker for a bosun punch. He was Navy. Yeah. And then
nice.
For bosun punch. And then what was the other one? Go get some flight line. Go get some power line. And then Hawk Missiles, I remember they used to send new troopers over to Supply to get some BA 1100Ns. Balloons.
No.
Yeah, we used to say occasionally somebody would get sent around for rotor wash.
Yeah.
But the other one, when I was at college at Kings Point and out at sea,
rotor wash, yeah.
They would try and send the cadet out on the bow to look for the mail buoy.
Oh yeah, that's right, the mail buoy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's one from Bago.
Bago. Yeah.
He sent them for vortex generator oil.
How many volts do you get from a vortex generator? That's always a good NATOPS question. That's good.
All of them. Oh, that's outstanding. Yeah.
All right. So VXE6. What is that, Iceman? VXE6.
VXE6. I went. So you guys have mentioned quite a bit that the military spouse it's a challenging job.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I got married I got engaged before I went on my deployment because I thought, that's great. She can plan the wedding. I won't screw anything up. It didn't.
How'd that work out for you?
Yeah. So that wasn't the best of ideas.
Jeez.
And then, of course, you never really know what your schedule is going to be like. So locking in on a wedding date's a challenge. And we had one set, and I was like, yeah, they told me I got to go back out to sea. So that much fun. So somehow I found an unbelievable Navy wife.
Nice.
She allowed me to go back-to-back sea tours because I really wanted to fly with VXE6. They were the squadron that at the time supported the National Science Foundation's Operation Deep Freeze with logistic support in Antarctica. I just always wanted to do that. This would be my only chance. So normally in the Navy, you would do a 3-year sea tour and then a 2 or 3 year shore tour. But I talked her into letting me go back-to-back sea tours. And just real quickly, during that time with VXE6, our son was born. I deployed 10 days after. We were in California. Our families both are on the East Coast. And she has a newborn on her own for my deployment.
Wow.
I missed 4 Christmases at home, 4 in a row. One when we were engaged, 3 married, or maybe 1 girlfriend, 1 engaged, 2 when we were married, 4 Christmases in a row.
Right.
A Navy spouse is an amazing person, period. And I tell her that as often as I can.
No, they are.
That doesn't answer your question, Big.
No, but you got me to where I was because I didn't know what that was, but now I do. So yeah, let's talk about that because that's some interesting stuff.
They're decommissioned now, but they were based in Point Mugu, California. That's in between LA and Santa Barbara. The Navy has a long tradition of aviation in Antarctica. In reaching back to 1929, Admiral Richard Byrd flew over the South Pole, and then he and his contingent chartered most of the coastline in Operation High Jump in 1946. In 1956, the first aircraft touched down at the South Pole, and it was a Navy aircraft. It's in the Naval Aviation Museum at Pensacola, called the K. Sarah Sarah. It was an R-4D Skytrain. So that developed into Operation Deep Freeze when in 1957, the Navy supported the scientists that were going down there for the inter something physical science year. I'm not sure of all the science behind it, but the Navy was selected to go down. Admiral Byrd was the officer in charge of that contingent. And then every year thereafter, until it was decommissioned, the Navy would provide the air support. The squadron had Hueys, HH-1 November, HH meaning it's the search and rescue version of the Huey. the Belle Iroquois. Nobody even knows it's called the Iroquois. Everybody calls it the Huey. We had 5 Hueys, 4 of them painted orange. One was painted green. I don't know why it was ever painted orange. So then if they needed to find you, it would show up real nice on the white.
Right.
At least they didn't. I was going to say, at least they didn't paint them white.
Yeah. We didn't need to hide, so they didn't need to be gray. Excuse me. And then the squadron also had, and I don't remember how many, but they had C-130 Hercules aircraft with skis. So they could land with wheels or skis. The helicopter mission has gone to civilian contract. I don't know what platform they're flying. And the C-130 mission, those aircraft have gone to the Air National Guard in Schenectady, New York. So I believe they are still providing air support. Yeah. At the beginning of the science season, the Air Force also provides C-17, C-141s to get the main contingent of scientists and support staff down there. So the U.S. has 3 bases in Antarctica: Palmer Station, South Pole Station, and the largest is McMurdo Station. We were based at McMurdo Station. The C-130s would fly from Point Mugu, California, to Christchurch, New Zealand, and they would transport the Hueys for us. The rest of the squadron and the helo pilots and crew, we would fly down commercial to Auckland and then to Christchurch, New Zealand. In Christchurch, which is the main jumping off point for McMurdo Station, you get all of your gear, all your cold weather gear. The dogs would sniff all your bags for drugs. And then you would wait for the weather to be good enough to go down to Antarctica in a C-130. And that was about a 7-hour flight, jammed in the back of a C-130. And I say the weather to be good enough because it's a long enough journey over the ocean that there is a point of no return.
Right.
So they have to know that the weather is good enough in McMurdo to land because they can't go back to Christchurch. It's all or nothing.
Right.
And the weather in Antarctica, just like the weather in Alaska that you had a helo pilot explain, can change in a minute. So it's a pretty tough mission.
So
pretty awesome.
So the weather guessers are really just that, then, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
The winds are so bad that they're in the operations center. There's a row of broken anemometers. Those are those little weather spinny things that tell you how fast the weather's going. A row of anemometers with when they broke and what the speed of the wind was when they broke. They have no idea what the speed of the wind was after it broke.
Beyond that, yeah.
The blades flew off from centrifugal force.
There you go.
So this is
like they try to do off a helicopter.
There's a very finite amount of time you guys are operating down there, right? Just because of the weather.
We operated from October to January, so the austral summer, right? When we were there for most deployments, all except 2 deployments, we were there when the sun was up 24 hours a day, which is odd coming out of midnight mass for Christmas and the sun is up, or coming back from a party at 2 a.m. and the sun is up,
right?
Or pulling a prank that you think you can pull in darkness when you're drunk because you don't remember that the light doesn't go off. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, crap, how are we going to do this? But we'll get there.
This ain't going to work.
Now, I say about 2 deployments. On my second deployment, a small group of us went earlier, and the sun was not up full time. We went, I don't know, it's 5 or 6 weeks, maybe not that long, but we went early enough because there were some science groups that had a grant to do certain research that could only be done at that time. It was called WINDET, Winter Detachment. It had only been done one other time in the squadron's history, so there wasn't a whole lot of corporate knowledge on what we were going to run into.
Okay.
And one of the things we did run into, our typical landing zone, we would have set spots that they would put a circle of rocks in because we wanted to attempt the least disruption of the landscape as we could in Antarctica. We wanted to keep it as pristine as possible, and keeping with the Antarctic Treaty. Sometimes we couldn't, land there because the scientists needed to be elsewhere. But regardless of where we were landing, we would throw a smoke and we would recover that smoke when we landed. But that would allow us to see where the winds were coming from, circle around to see the smoke, and then, affect our landing. So one of the first times we were doing that during wind dead, the crew chief, as we started our turn, was like, "Sir, we got an engine fire. The engine's smoking." And we're looking at the gauges, sort of like with the 860 and the float bags. Now the engines are fine. We don't know what's going on, but the engines look great. But let's get it on the deck. So we got it on the deck, and what was happening, it was minus 40 degrees. And for those that are interested, why I can remember that is because that's where Celsius and Fahrenheit cross. So if you ask me, was it 40 degrees Fahrenheit? It doesn't matter. It was either or.
Oh,
so it was minus 40 degrees, and the engines were
40 degrees cold.
contrailing on deck. So it was not smoking, it was contrailing.
Wow.
So what that meant is if you missed your first pass because you didn't set it up right or whatever the case may be, and you attempted to go around to land in that same landing zone, you voided yourself out. You're going to fly through your contrail, and you can't do that. So you had one shot at it. So that was a lesson that we learned down there.
See, that's a show title there, man. Contrailing on deck.
Yeah.
Holy.
So I got a couple of other questions. So so obviously flying down in Antarctica, very cold. How did that affect your aircraft?
The aircraft flew great because the air is dense, and those rotor blades love to beat it into submission. So it had more air. The performance was great. We only had room for one aircraft in the hangar, very small hangar, maybe two. So we would keep them outside, and we just pull the batteries. I think that was also mentioned in the pilot that flew in the Arctic. So we'd pull the batteries to keep them warm. They flew fine. We really didn't run into any issues. If I remember correctly, the one operating limitation was there was a certain oil, transmission maybe, that would congeal lower than 40 degrees. So we were right at the operating limit of the Huey.
Yeah. Wow. So, I think that would, if I recall correctly, the main gearbox transmission oil was always more susceptible to problems in the cold. But I did quick look, and that mission's now being supported by the Bell 412 at the present time. So,
thank you.
Did you have any special classes or instruction on polar navigation?
Not on polar navigation, because the magnetic deviation was so great. We did not use our compass. We had a GPS. It was a very, very primitive GPS, a little green box on the dash that gave latitude and longitude, and then basically how to get there. You plug in where you want to go, and it tells you what direction and how far, but it's extremely primitive. And that's all we had. So from McMurdo Station is built on Ross Island. Ross Island is a volcanic island in McMurdo Sound. We would operate not only around the island, but mainly over on the continent itself. So we had to cross the Ross ice sheet, and we would not fly over water. So depending on when in the season it was, we had to skirt around and take the long way to get to the continent. And then we would support operations on the continent. There were some camps over there, or we would bring scientists from McMurdo to the continent to do the research they needed to do, maybe drop them off for an hour and come pick them up, maybe for a day, 2 days. It all depended on what their needs were. And in the meantime, we would so at the beginning of the day, you'd have maybe 4 aircraft out, 3 to 4, and you'd get a sheet of paper that was very cryptic and had your mission on it. And you'd be responsible for this many passengers, this much payload, and go to point A to point B. And your next mission is maybe point C to point D. And if you do that in order, you can get it all done. If you get ahead of the game, you try to look at somebody else, and you're keeping track on the radios of what everyone else's mission and where they are and how they're doing. And the most fun we had was trying to, what we would call skua, and I'll explain that term, skua somebody else's mission. Because, of course, if you say, hey, we were X-ray Delta 11, this is X-ray Delta 15, we can pick up those guys at Lake Horror because we're right here. We see that you got that coming up. Like, no, we can do it. No, we're right here. We got it. You sort of fight over who's going to get the mission done because it's a pride thing. So skua is an Antarctic bird that is basically an overgrown, over-aggressive pigeon. They will eat. Well, if you have a bag lunch, so at the beginning of the day, you don't only get your mission, but you get a bag lunch because more than likely you're not coming back to McMurdo. Or if you do get back to McMurdo, it's not going to be lunchtime. So you get a bag lunch in your mission. If that bag lunch is more than 2 feet away from you, a skua is going to grab it. They'll eat penguin chicks. They're very aggressive. And of course, they have no fear of humans because there are so few humans, and the Antarctic Treaty does not allow you to harm wildlife. So we could not go up to penguins, for instance, and try to hug one or take one home to mama. Damn. We would get near them, and then if you just stay still and they come to you, well, I mean, that's allowed. We're not harassing them. They're coming to harass us. They get within a few feet and get some awesome shots of them and all. They would never, come up enough to really be curious because they're smart enough to see that thing doesn't belong here. I'm out of here. Yeah, so we tried to skua missions. There was a refueling station called Marble Point over on the island. The manager there, awesome guy, cut in touch for years. His natural given name, he was from Moscow, Idaho, was Diamond Western. So after his time in Antarctica, he was a contractor cleaning up the Marshall Islands. McMurdo Station is like an old Western mining town. Dusty, full of characters. I mean, those that want to go down to Antarctica and spend a year or 6 months or whatever it is, they're just a little different.
Yeah.
They had all the infrastructure you'd want. They had a bowling alley, a small gym, great fire department because if your place burns down, that's all you got. So fire was very, on the tip of barbershop, a little gedunk store where you could buy trinkets or bag of chips, whatever, cafeteria, or barracks. Normally you want an outside room so you get a view, but in Antarctica, you want an inside room so that you don't have light coming in your window 24 hours a day, and it's warmer inside than on an outside room with a window.
Wow. Junior guys get the outside rooms.
Yeah.
So then the C-130s, go ahead, Steph.
No, you was going to say you just used another term, which is gedunk. One more we got to throw on there. So that's like the ship store, but the classic Navy term. So,
yeah. So the C-130 mission, they would bring things from Christchurch, New Zealand to McMurdo. They would fly from McMurdo to South Pole Station, mail, people, food. And then they would also bring scientists out to the continent, and landing on the continent itself, further away than the Huey could do, was quite interesting because they would land, or they would do a run to make sure the snow could handle them without landing. And they would have to do that before they made a full landing because they didn't want to hit a crevasse, or some people call it crevice, but a crevasse is a large opening, a large V in the ice. And they can be a couple 100 feet deep. So we're trained how to walk and how to deal with, that type of situation. Because if you fall in a crevasse, it's not the fall that's going to kill you. It's that pointy part at the bottom. And then you're stuck down there. They're not getting you out.
Yeah.
So the first thing you do, anyone down there, regardless of who you are, if you're going out into the field, because some people are at McMurdo the full time. The barber, he or she may never leave McMurdo Station. But if you're going out into the field, you have to go through Happy Camper School, where they teach you how to survive, how to make a snow hut, how to traverse over the glaciers to avoid the crevasses, using an ice axe, things like that. And that was, the first week I was there, since I hadn't been there before, was Happy Camper School. The Hueys naturally make a nice loud whopping noise. You throw that on a slight grade where Happy Camper School is at. You have no limit on the altitude you can fly. Nice thick air. So I'm in Happy Camper School, and one of those orange Hueys flies by just you got to plug your ears with a whop, 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 and that angle of bank. And I'm just, this is going to be fun. This is going to be great. There is no, the C-130s built an ice runway or the staff that, not the C-130 crew. Yeah. An ice runway is built for the beginning of the season because you can land wheeled aircraft on the ice runway. Once that starts to melt, they move the field to a snow runway, and only the Hercs with skis, there are also Twin Otters that have skis, they can land on the snow runway.
Okay.
So that's the only controlled airspace. There's a tower for that airfield, and we weren't anywhere near there. We didn't go near there. We just got our mission, did what we did. We had to check in with ops on the radio every, I don't remember if it was 15 minutes or half hour, but fairly often for safety. And then it was just free game. Here's your keys. Here's your mission. Go. Get it done.
Pretty much. Nice. Navy standard there is 15 minutes. 15-minute ops checks for helicopters. So 30 minutes for fixed-wing aircraft. So.
Well, yeah. But plus, I guess that you said there are 4 of them down there, but, if something happens, you're kind of on your own. Hence the Happy Camper School, right?
Yeah. And you do have a survival bag. Yeah. And if the crash doesn't kill you, it's the survival that if, they still got to find you.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, so you talked about, last week, Governor talked about being out on a day flying around in a ping pong ball. And you have the same term there. And I don't think he described it real well. If you could describe that, what it's like to fly in a ping pong ball. And I'm assuming it's like that a lot down there.
Right. We don't. We avoid it at all costs. I did send you one picture where you can see that in that picture happens to be the frozen McMurdo Sound. But if you're on the continent and it's all snow, it's the same thing. All you have is white for as far as you can see on the ground. So you have no reference. There are no trees. There are no ships. There's just white. And then when a cloud layer comes in, it just slowly works its way down, or if there's snow involved in it, it slowly gets worse. And if you let that white from the bottom and the white from the top come together, you're in a ping pong ball. You have no idea which way is up, which way is down, left, right. So you avoid it at all costs. There was only one time, you often ask your guests the scariest experience. I had 2. And they were both in Antarctica. One was the story I started with, where we lost tail rotor effectiveness. And the other, weather was coming in slowly. We were working our way toward the continent. So it was over the ice shelf, pure white on the bottom. And then the white from the top started coming in. It started to snow. We could make out the continent. Yeah, there's the shot of it for those that are viewing. We could make out the continent like you can in that picture. But that slowly started to disappear.
Yeah. We were close left side of that picture, it's already gone, really.
Yeah.
You can kind of see terrain in the distance there, right? Yeah, just a little bit. Oh, shit.
We're close enough to the continent that we could pick out land, but we continually had to slow down. We were trying to get to the refueling station where we knew we could shut down and we could hunker down for a while. We didn't really want, because you don't know how long it's going to last. That's one of the problems.
Yeah.
You don't fly on instruments. You do not go in the clouds because you're going to get icing. Icing and helicopter blades don't mix. And these aren't clouds where you can just play with them. You will get icing. We continue to slow down to the point where, you're at 15 knots. You're at 10 knots, 5 knots, 2 knots. Okay, boys, we're done. So now the snow's blowing. You're slow enough and low enough, literally feet off the ground, that you're whipping up the snow. You're just in a snow globe.
So you're making it worse than, okay.
So your crew chief is hanging out the back door, looking at the ground, and telling you what you're doing to land you. You basically could close your eyes, because if you get vertigo, that's not good. You have to have 100% trust in the crew chief. Steady left. You're drifting left slow, drifting left more. Okay, come steady. A little bit right, a little bit. You're good. You're forward. You're drifting forward. Come on aft. Okay, you're steady. Go ahead. Come on down. 1 foot. You're 1 foot. You're drifting left. Again. Come back steady. You're steady. Come on down 8 inches. 8 to 6 inches. Land.
That's terrifying.
So then we had to do that, and we stayed there. It actually cleared up within an hour. It wasn't. Sorry, guys. All right, I'm gonna switch those.
So you're having to fly like One Eye did without the benefit of a Purple Heart at the end of the day.
Jeez.
Holy, just trust in what he says. Oh my God, that's terrifying.
That is terrifying.
That is the dance that you're doing when you're flying a helicopter and you've got your flight mech in the back and you're putting your swimmer down.
Yeah.
It's easy forward right, right, or you're gonna go right 10, easy forward right, coming up over the target, hold, lift and left, and it's just this constant back and forth. And when you get good at it, it's amazing. It's a lot of fun. But the other thing is being on NVGs and down near the water, especially on a calm night, you're in that milk bowl effect. It's that same exact thing. And sometimes you're sitting over the boat and you're just trying to keep yourself out of the water. It's absolutely, I think back to it now and I'm going, what the hell was I thinking while I was doing that? But yeah, I can be like,
just terrifying.
As you're describing that to me, I'm back there. All of a sudden I'm back over the boat, over the water at night. And yeah. So.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Somehow you got muted there. Let me see if I can undo it. I can't unmute you, Iceman. There it goes. You're it.
Got it. Sorry about that.
He's back.
Yeah, pods fell out.
No worries.
So just like I mentioned on the H60, that's that guy in the back, SAR swimmer, sensor operator, crew chief, all the above. The folks, the crew chief in Antarctica, they were well trained. They would build up our skids so we could land anywhere. So all we needed was 4 points, meaning where the cross tubes reached the skids. Those 4 points, if we had something hard to land on and relatively level, we would land. So in Antarctica, oftentimes they were building up, grabbing rocks and building up your 4 points. You might have 2 points, you might have 3 points. So you're in a hover. The crew chief is out with a cord on his helmet, so he still has communications with you. Easy up. Okay, a little bit left, and putting a rock wherever. All right, come down easy. See how it holds. No, a little bit more, and you end up landing at pretty much anywhere you can. I remember in training back at Point Magoo, we would fly up in the mountains, LA, and there was a fixed wing crash that a couple of helicopters, including an Army helicopter, they went by and they're like, we can't affect, it was a light civil aircraft. We can't affect this. There's no way we can land to save these guys. You're going to have to come in by some other means. And we had an aircraft, the XE6 had a helo up in the area. They went by and the crew chief's like, oh, no, sir, we can build that up right over here. And they saved those guys because of the expertise that was needed in Antarctica.
Well, that's unique.
That's awesome.
The science down in Antarctica was fascinating to me. One great example is the Antarctic fish can survive at -2 degrees Celsius because they have glycopeptides in their blood that is basically antifreeze. So you're like, okay, so what? So they get to survive. Well, they were trying to figure out if they could isolate that antifreeze, that glycopeptide, and use that in preserving organs for organ transplant. So instead of keeping it cold, and you could have a longer lifespan for that organ. I don't know, whatever became of that, but it's just some fascinating science going on down there.
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
one of the neat missions.
Some of the climate research that's been coming out of there has just been fascinating as well.
So that sort of led me to one of the other missions. They would send up these long, the weather balloons for climate studies and all. And they could only control them a certain amount. I think they would let air out if they wanted it to come down into a different air mass, or drop weight if they wanted it to raise into an air mass, something like that. But they only had limited control as to where it ended up. And then they would cut the balloon, parachute the payload down, and the payload would send out a signal. So we'd take out the scientists that were involved in this, and we affectionately called the scientists beakers. So we'd take out the beakers, and they would have like divining rods or something that they were picking up this signal. They're their little earplugs in, and they're out the aircraft. Okay, go left. Go right. And finally you look back like, you don't have a clue where this thing is, do you? No, sir, we're good. All right, fine. And you'd think finding a big old parachute in the white snow is easy, but it was, needle in a haystack. But eventually we'd get it. We'd find it. You'd land. They would stuff that parachute in the back, get their payload. So on one of those missions, I was like, hey guys, what are you doing with that parachute? Because my wife was a school teacher, grade school teacher. I thought that would be awesome for the school.
Yeah.
So like, well, yeah, we don't use it again because the payload is so expensive. We don't trust a parachute for a second run. I'm like, great. Can I have it? Sure, you bet. So now I got this parachute, big as I'll get out. Not a clue what I'm going to do with it or how I'm going to get it back. So one night, somebody had the idea after a few drinks that maybe we should cover the National Science Foundation headquarters building, known as the Chalet, because it looked like a ski chalet. That was the building that you don't go to, because that's where all the muckety-mucks worked. The National Science Foundation that gave all the money. Somebody had the idea of, let's go do an op and cover the chalet with a parachute. I don't know who had that idea or who covered that, but it might have happened. And it might have been at 2 a.m. when the sun was up, and all of a sudden, whoever did that was like, oh, crap, the sun didn't go down tonight. What happened? But they never got caught, and they just started spreading the rumor that it was the New Zealand helicopter pilots, because those guys were crazy. They must have come over from Scott Base, which is a mile away. Those darn Kiwis must have done that. And it took the fire truck, the station fire truck, to bring its ladder and get that off of there.
Those crazy bastages. That's awesome.
Kiwi pilots. So we'd have some fun.
Okay, that's a lawsuit.
Well, I'm guessing that whoever did that, whoever coordinated that, my guess would be he or she was up all night long thinking, I wonder if that propane heater stack coming out of the top of the building would catch the parachute on fire, which would catch the building on fire,
right?
Which would catch McMurdo Station on fire.
That'd be bad
which
luck.
Might end a career.
Yeah.
These are the things that we ponder.
When you're bored in Antarctica.
Yeah.
What could
Surrounded
possibly
by
go
penguins.
wrong?
So there was one more mission that I'd like to talk about was there was a long duration balloon that the payload, it was multinational who was involved in this project, and the payload was worth $4 million. Well, they dropped it, or it had to drop, because like I said, they have minimal control over where it goes. They dropped it where no aircraft could get to it, no snowmobile, no snowcat, whatever they're using could get to it. And our skipper said, well, we can send Hueys to get it. It was twice our normal operating range. I don't have the exact distance to it, but being twice our normal operating range, we had to refuel halfway there. And this was way up on the polar plateau, so it's getting really cold. Refuel by hand cranking gas out of 55-gallon drums. The payload is so large that we're shuttling it back and forth in pieces, back and forth, humping that payload until we can get it to a place where a Twin Otter aircraft can come and pick it up. So that was tough. That was a serious mission. But typical Navy, typical Navy Marine Corps, there is no mission we can't do.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah. There you go. Well, is this the one where you lost tail rotor authority?
No, that was up. We were bringing beakers there's a lower hut and an upper hut, Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is one of the two active volcanoes in Antarctica.
And that's the one you teased when we opened the show.
Right.
Okay.
So we brought some beakers we're picking them up, from the upper hut. So we were above 10,000 feet. We needed to be on oxygen.
Okay, one more question. If you said it, I missed it because I was doing show production stuff. You told me the other day what beakers are. Did you say today what beakers are?
Yeah, we covered
real quickly.
beakers.
Okay, all right. My apologies.
Yeah. That was our
the scientists
affectionate term for scientists.
Yeah. Okay. My apologies. I missed it. I was doing show production or something when you covered it today. Sorry, everyone.
It was the beakers.
So I was the helicopter aircraft polar. We had the polar designation too. Aside from being a helicopter aircraft commander or HAC, we had to get a polar qualification to be able to operate
So you were a
down in
FAC.
Antarctica.
PHAC.
PHAC, yep.
PHAC.
So my co-pilot was, by rank, he was senior to me. He had more flying experience, but not in Antarctica. But I allowed him to crunch the numbers to figure out, what our safe operating limits were. And I had complete trust in him. He was a fine pilot. When we loaded up on the upper hut, the scientists brought all their gear, whatever they needed, if they were collecting rocks or, I don't recall what it was. And as we start to pull collective, it became pretty obvious to me that we were over the weight that we needed to be to still have tail rotor authority, the tail rotor counteracting that torque of the main rotor so that you can fly straight. But and so the options are to try to fly out of that if you can, but you're sort of going in a circle. Or if you stay over the spot, you spiral out of control. Neither of those were options, obviously. I don't want to spiral out of control because you're going left, and that's where Mount Erebus was. Going right is down to the ocean and would have been okay if I, could have got that way, but that was impossible. But a lot of your pilots have said when the emergencies kick in, their training just happens automatically. And I was able to recognize this and put it back on the ground with some yaw. It wasn't perfect, but we got it on the ground safely. Scared me, period. There are no other words to it. Just scared.
Did you have spare flight suits with you, or did you have to go home dirty?
So we were able to lighten our load. There's nothing worth taking, whether it's science or whatever. There's nothing worth taking.
Leave them beakers behind.
So we left some stuff behind, and we got back down safely. And then I recrunched the numbers to see, why did we do that? We were not supposed to do that. Oftentimes we would account, the beakers would tell us how much weight they're bringing, then we would add to it because they like to underestimate. It's just sort of human nature. Got to get the mission done. So we would often bump it up a little bit. So I crunched the numbers to double check, and we were out of limits, and the co-pilot just didn't happen to check that. So that brings me to the trust but verify, as I know I've heard RePete say before.
Oh yeah.
So this actually brings up because obviously on the helicopter side of things, what I think what I want some of our listeners to understand. So there are two curves or that we look at. So we have power available and power required. And power required is the amount of power that you need to actually do the operation that you're doing. And then there's the power available. You may actually, when you're initially taking off, you're going to have more power requirement than what you may have available. And so that you're going to end up either bleeding rotor turns off of the main rotor or not having the power authority that you need out of the tail rotor. So it's, there's a very finite limit, and that's one of the things I think it's kind of easily overlooked when it comes to, dealing with helicopters and that. So it's amazing that you were able to put that down.
Yeah, that's
better
awesome.
lucky than good.
Right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Every single time.
Don't doubt it. So, and then I'm assuming, I'm asking a stupid aerodynamics question then, I guess, that if there's more power required than power available, if you're right on the edge, you can get into translational lift, move forward speed. Does that solve some of your issue? Or can you not do it because you don't have the tail rotor authority to do it? Or does it depend?
You would not be able to do it. If you're right on that edge, and once you're past the translational lift, then you could be okay, right? Okay. But it's that hover.
But you can't get there from here.
That translational lift usually equates to about a 10 to 15% power margin now that is working in your favor. Yep. And what translational lift is that you've got clean air. You're not recirculating your air, and you've got clean air coming in through the rotor disc, and so you're into a more efficient flight regime. And actually, once you're north of or outside, beyond translational lift or above translational lift, the helicopter flies a lot more like a fixed wing airplane than it does a helicopter. which is why I think, and this is what I think is often misunderstood. When we're in forward flight, I'm flying a plane. That's pretty much what it's like. It's below translational lift that things get interesting.
So, well, let me ask, how often did you fly when you were down there in Antarctica? Did you fly a couple times a week, every day? What?
The
question?
The squadron flew 6 days a week, and pretty much, I don't know what time we started in the morning, but reasonable hour, 8 o'clock in the morning, straight through till you try to get back by dinner time.
Okay.
Sometimes you don't get back by dinner time, and the ops always keeps a close track on that, and you get a second bag lunch for the day. But that it's fairly rare. So each pilot, we had 5 aircraft, 11 or 12 pilots. You get 2 or 3 days of flying in a week at least, and then at some point you're scheduled to be in ops to overlook and to make the schedule for the next day. They always wanted the helo pilot in there helping out the civilian that was coordinating everything.
Okay. Wow. And how many hours did you wind up with?
In the Huey, I looked it up because I know you asked that periodically.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I had for dinner yesterday. Huey was 697 hours. And the H-60, I actually had more. I had 828 in the H-60. But I only did, 2 years with VXE-6 because the second deployment, that was the decommissioning deployment, the last deployment for us.
You flew 828 hours in 2 years in the H-60.
3 years. That was a full 3-year tour.
Okay.
Right. So a total of 1777. 278 shipboard landings.
Wow.
Well,
did you guys do a lot of sling loading or hoists as well?
We didn't do a lot of it, but we did quite a bit of it because on that sling load, we can take more payload. The problem with sling loading from McMurdo to the continent, which is where we would need to get most of the gear, is that it took so long and you were limited on airspeed because it would start to oscillate out of control a little bit. So you had to slow down and then get all the way over to the continent, which on a normal flight might take, depending on where the ice is, because we have to avoid the open water. If it's a straight shot, it might take 15, 20 minutes. If the ice is melted, it's towards the end of the season and we've got to skirt around, take half hour, 35 minutes. So if you put a sling load on there, now you're really burning gas and going slow. So we did it, but it was rare.
Okay. And you managed to adhere to the regulation of making sure you sling load your water buffalo?
Yeah.
We did have pigs. We did sling load pigs.
Awesome.
So
more livestock.
Hold on. Were they, did you kill any livestock? Were they frozen?
Were there any livestock harmed in your operations?
There are some field stations that require propane to operate, and there were huge propane tanks. And we would put fins. Well, they were painted like pigs. The propane tanks were painted like pigs.
Okay.
All right.
And we would put fins on them that were cut out of plywood, so that when we did sling a pig, it would fly steady.
Nice.
Yeah, I've slung pigs.
Okay.
That's awesome.
But they all had pig faces painted on them.
Okay.
The front of them
There,
are, front of those propane tanks are round.
More livestock stories.
Yeah, I thought maybe we might have another show title there too, Slinging Pigs.
Well, they were slinging pigs.
The thing about
put
flying
fins
down
on
there
pigs.
is we flew with cold weather gear, of course, but not a dry suit or anything like that. We would just layer up as much as possible. And we did not fly with flight boots. We flew with mucklucks. So mucklucks, these were thick cotton liner and then a relatively thin cotton outer shell. So big fat old muckluck to keep our feet warm. They worked real well. They weren't Nomex, but so be it. You gotta live to try to avoid catching fire anyway.
Yeah. If you're on fire, you're at least warm.
And then our gloves had cutouts for they were 3-finger gloves. So 3 fingers would fit in them, then cutouts for your index finger and your thumb so that you could control the cyclic. And some people would wear regular flight gloves. The Huey did not have any insulation. Some of those aircraft were older than our youngest pilot in the squadron. They were Vietnam era. They still had ashtrays in them. Really old aircraft, not particularly warm, but you didn't really want to get overly warm in there because with every mission, you're helping the crew. The pilots would help the crew chief unload what they needed to unload. If a science camp had a Scott tent named after Captain Robert Falkland Scott, one of the early English explorers, he had a particular type of tent that they still use today, a large triangle. If we had a Scott tent for these beakers, we would strap them to the skids, and that takes some time and know-how. So we would do it. We would not allow the beakers to do that. So between the pilot, one of the pilots, and the crew chief, you're constantly getting out, getting sweaty, humping stuff because you want to get to the next mission and screw with somebody else's mission. So you're working hard. You don't want to get all hot and then cold, hot and cold. So it was fun.
Did you guys do engine running offloads, or did you shut down when you were changing out the code?
It would depend. We would normally engine running offloads. You train any passengers very well to avoid the tail rotor. The crew chief would make sure they avoided the tail rotor when they exited or entered the rotor arc. So normally it would be running if we were just offloading. If we were shutting down, if we're leaving, if some scientists needed to be there for half an hour to go collect rocks, they were geologists, and we did not have another mission that we could possibly fit in that time frame, then we would shut down and just hang out.
Okay.
And that when we would do that, the quietness was deafening.
You would just like being in a sound vacuum, right?
You could hear your heartbeat just sitting there. It was awesome.
Yeah,
just awesome.
Yeah, because we had Aircraft Chris talking about getting out and leaving everything running and walking away from
Yeah, we did not do that. We did not do that. Yeah. One time we dropped off some beakers in their survival bag, which is a fairly big kit. I don't know, maybe 5 by 3, something like that, by a couple of feet thick.
Okay.
So we dropped that all off on a glacier that they needed to go do some work on. And as we took off, I noticed that the survival bag started to slip down the glacier. And if that got away from them, then they're done. We can't leave them like that. If we're setting them up overnight, we make sure they test their radio before we leave them, so that they have communications back to Mactown, which is what McMurdo Station is called.
Okay.
Anyway, that survival bag started slipping, so we moved back and used the rotor disc and that rotor wash to push it back up towards them. Probably froze the heck out of them with that rotor wash, but I'm sure they'd rather have that survival bag than be cold for a few minutes while we maneuvered it up there.
Than be cold for the rest of their life, the rest of their short life. So, yeah. All right. Well, we've been going for a little bit. I know you've got a couple stories left. What I'd like to do is save that for a quick after we get out of here. I'd like to land this airplane and then get that one or two other little notes out of you about, let's see where to go there. I have notes about, Licking the Blubber and the Lake Vonda Swim Club. So, but yeah, if we could do that as we start to wrap things up here. First thing I'd like to do is to thank, we have an all-star audience here with us today, Fig. I don't know if you and Sticks noticed this. We've got
I did.
Donuts listening. Brad Silcott from BDS Aviation Photography's here. Bago's here, obviously. Marcus Ponte. Chucker's been in and out, mostly out. I guess he's playing bingo at a birthday party. Our new ×3 tanker aircraft commander as of yesterday. Thank you, Sal. Sal's with us. And the venerable One Eye. Welcome, sir. We are honored that you're listening.
That's Ben Cassio. Thank you, Marine.
Ben Cassio.
Thanks for joining us today.
Semper Fi, Marine. Glad you're with us. So, yeah. Sticks, if you could take us to the next portion of the out, we'd appreciate that.
Okay. All right.
So, Sticks, I'm sorry. One other thing. This is my fault. My humble apologies. Iceman, you're involved now with something called Comeback Yoga, and I'd like you to chat briefly about that, please, so everybody hears about what that is.
Thanks. I will repeat. As most Navy pilots and definitely helicopter pilots go, I had some severe back issues, and I started doing yoga maybe 20 years ago. It's really helped me. When I moved to Denver, the Denver area, I started doing yoga at one of the VFW posts, and came to find out that it was sponsored by a nonprofit called Comeback Yoga. local Denver based, but they offer classes in Colorado live and then online, YouTube, and pre-recorded as well through their website, comebackyoga.org. So if you're in the Denver area, I highly recommend you look it up. It's a great way to get with other vets. And as we age, we need a little help with that balance, strength, flexibility. And it helps us deregulate the brain down into a place where we can, get a little calm. Doesn't matter if it's a text message, somebody at work, somebody in traffic. Our brains are always up in that fight or flight mode. And that this yoga practice, it is done from a science-based, trauma-informed manner. So I just wanted to give a plug for Comeback Yoga. Please
That's outstanding.
Support us.
Yeah.
Thanks
Comebackyoga.com.
That's awesome.
.org.
Yeah.
.org. My apologies. Comebackyoga.org. And I'll put that in the show.
Comebackyoga.org.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll even second that a little bit. So for some of our listeners who know or don't know, but I actually work professionally now as a nurse practitioner. And the one thing that I will say is that well pilots are safe pilots. So you do have to try and take care of yourself. So anyways, I think the next thing that we need to do is we need to say thank you to all of our service members. We so appreciate the sacrifices that you make and those sacrifices that are made by your families. It would be impossible for us to have the military service that we do without the support of the family around them. And that includes their children, the spouses. We owe you a sincere debt, and we thank you for your service.
Indeed. And thank you also to backbeatmedia.com. They support us with advertising. And, of course, the head of that is one gent by the name of Dave Hamilton, who's given us the support and technical know-how. Dave can be found at the Mac Geek Gab, the Gig Gab for musicians, and the Business Brain for entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for that. And our bandwidth is supplied by cashfly.com.
We've thrown a lot of acronyms around today, and most of them can be found on our glossary at sothereiwas.us/glossary. And if you can't find one that we've used, please reach out to specifically the guy that's the smartest guy in the room always, Sticks, at sothereiwas.us, and he'll get that sucker added to the glossary.
Absolutely.
Glad to do it, but I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
Hey, and by the way, in case you haven't heard, we have a merch store.
What?
Yeah, I know. And so if you're watching, you can RePete's really rocking the merch, man. He's got a cool, is that a hoodie or a vest? Or
got the hoodie. I got the hoodie on.
Yeah.
Got the hat.
I'm rocking the bikini bottoms right now, but nobody wants to see that. But mine are fur-lined, and they are awesome. We do have a bikini on the merch store, but glasses, cocktail glasses, coffee mugs, towels, blankets. I don't know what. Probably if we don't have it, it's not made. I'm not sure. What do you think,
Right.
RePete?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And write to us and ask for it. We'll see if we can get it on there. Have not been able to get a winter wool cap, but had a couple other things asked for, and we've gotten them up there. So we do want to thank all our Patreon pilots and our direct donor support. If you go to sothereiwas.us/donate, you get to our page where you can donate directly. But Patreon actually does a nice job of helping me keep everybody in one place. So everybody that donates over there, we're humbly grateful for you working hard, earning that money, and then sillily.
Well,
Is that a word?
I don't even know what that means.
With total lack of judgment, you throw it in our direction, and we're humbled and honored by that.
Yes.
So thank you to all our Patreon pilots, and especially this week, I'd like to acknowledge Sal Marinello, who is now a triple tanker aircraft commander. God bless you, sir. Appreciate you stepping up and doing that. Rick Mosley is now a double tanker aircraft commander, so thank you, sir. We've got a new section lead this week, Jeremy Strack. And Jim McHale is also a new Patreon pilot. So thank you, gentlemen. We can't tell you how much we appreciate your spending your hard-earned money on keeping this show going. It's
very humbling. Very humbling. Thank you so much.
All right. And if you wanted to help us out, let's say you don't have the bandwidth to buy some merch or something like that, then please do us a favor and rate the show. Share the show. Tell your friends about the show. It is what is the lifeblood that's sort of continuing to push the show forward. Also, we need to throw a big thank you out to Brad Silcott of bdsaviationphotography.com. You can find some absolutely awesome photos there, even some photos for the Coast Guard. So thank you, Dave.
Absolutely. And I'm going to jump in real quick here, even though this goes to you, Fig. Ray Glanville, one of our donors, I just noticed is online. He says this is his first time catching a live show, so we're glad you're in the audience with us as well. Thank you very much for your support, sir. Appreciate it.
Welcome, Ray. Welcome aboard. Thanks for watching. Hey, you heard in the background, those are the DOS Air Force F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good, the Dos Gringos. Awesome music. They were a great interview. They let us use their music for our show. You can find their music on Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, wherever you get your music. And they have 4 albums out, and there's not one bad song in any of them.
Not one. Any advice for our listeners till next week, Fig?
Well, we got to say it because of our guest. Don't let go of the collective. Do not let go of the collective.
Absolutely not.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. When you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Hey, what?
He said it's over, man.
Yeah. And in honor of one of the last stories.
That boy is a P.I.G. pig.
Nice.
Why not?
And we are out. All right. Sadly, I've got a hard out, so I can't talk much longer. Let's get those 2 last stories.
You got a
in.
what?
I've got a hard out here. I got to do it.
Whoa, I thought I heard something else.
Yeah, put your ears back in. No, I wouldn't be sad about that.
All right.
So, but let's
I'm
get those
getting a
last
hard out
stories
just
in,
talking
and then
about it right
you
now.
and I are going to have to come back and do the intro another day for everybody. But I think, I'd like to go, Iceman, if we can, and talk quickly about licking the blubber and then the Lake Vanda Swim Club. We'll put those up on Patreon for everybody, and then Fig and I will circle back at an intro for this one.